Thanks for tuning in to Thoughts for Tuesday, hosted by Bates Communications, a podcast series about business trends and leadership insights from the experts.
Hi everyone, I'm Suzanne Bates, CEO of Bates Communications, and I'm delighted to be here with Ralph Dangelmaier, CEO and founder of BlueSnap. And BlueSnap was just yesterday named to Inc. magazine's 2018 list of fastest growing companies. What are they doing here at BlueSnap? Well, we're going to get into that in a minute, but the short take is they're helping merchants take on the Goliath Amazon by giving them the technology to accept payments from anywhere. So I got to know Ralph when he was an executive in the payments business. He was very successful, growing revenue from $300 million to over $1 billion at ACI Global Markets and Services, and before that at another ACI business where he became the leader in his business in that space. So excited to have you here, Ralph, to talk with you about your story, how you became an entrepreneur, what you've learned about growing companies and driving success in your business. Welcome.
Thanks, Suzanne. It's great to be here.
So I'd like to go back, before we get into the story of BlueSnap, I'd like to go back and learn just a little about you growing up. I know you grew up in Reading, Mass. You went to Stonehill College. But take me back to when you were a kid. At some point, I mean, did you know what you wanted to do? Did you want to be a CEO when you grew up?
Actually, no. I never thought I was going to be a CEO. But I guess when I look back now, I had a lot of fun working, probably more working than I did in school, if that makes any sense. I had things like paper routes, and I developed my own lawn businesses, and I was working in restaurants, and I was always trying to collect coins and sell them in ways. So I guess when I look back, there was a little bit of that in me, but I didn't really understand what it all meant at the time as I was a kid. I was just doing things I liked to do, and unfortunately, my parents, it wasn't as much hitting the books as they would have liked.
Well, little did they know. So you had, I guess we would call it now, that entrepreneurial spirit, but what made you do those things? What made you try those things? Did you want to make money? Were you just curious?
I think, first of all, I wanted to make a little money. I thought it was fun, taking something and trying to make money. I thought that was just interest, and I guess, later I learned that was sort of a passion I had. But I was also very curious. I like asking questions, and when I meet even merchants that we work with today, I'm always curious on how they started, what they did, how they found the niche, and so I was always curious on how opportunities got created and started, and so just something that interests me, I guess.
Yeah. What'd you learn? Did you have one of those businesses that was really successful, or did you learn something that you still think back on now?
I don't know if all my businesses were that successful, to be fair. I learned a bunch of things. I learned that it was hard work, that you had to commit to things, and you couldn't just start a lawn care business and then decide next week you weren't going to mow lawns, because you had to do it every week. So I had to get to commit. I think the other thing I learned is that the better relationship you had with people, the easier it was to get it done the way you wanted to get done, or the easier it was to make money. So I learned relationships were really important. I also learned that you kind of had to have fun doing it, that if you enjoyed it a little bit, you worked harder at it, and it was kind of interesting. And I also learned that you really could learn from others. Mm-hmm. And I feel that sometimes you go into things thinking we really know best, and really when you look to talk to others that have done something for a while, you can pick up a lot of things and tips, and people do enjoy teaching what they've learned more. And there's this word mentor, which might be overused in some ways, but what it really means is take the opportunity to learn from other people, because it really can teach you things that will help you in what you're trying to do, maybe not immediately, but maybe later in life. So those are the things I picked up.
Yeah. So you must have had a mentor, somebody you think of when you say that, who you learned something from. Anything that leaps to mind?
Well, I spent a lot of time in the later years of my teenage years with my grandfather, who was the really executive vice president of Perini Corp, worked for the Perinis, and so pretty successful guy. And he learned a lot about how to develop businesses and grow things. And my parents were also super supportive. My mom was a teacher, and so she was constantly working and trying to develop things and helping people through. And my father turned out to be a really good worker and important person at General Electric, where he was actually selling aircraft engines to other parts of the world, which actually got me curious in international travel. And so I did a bunch of trips with him to different places in the world where they're trying to sell jet airplanes to other countries, navies and air forces, which was an extremely valuable experience. So I picked up from people as I was close to.
Yeah. Wow, so you had that international experience before many of us were getting to travel abroad with your dad, and that must have been amazing.
It was fun.
Yeah. So you graduated from college, and did you did you know you wanted to start a career path in corporate America?
So I really didn't know what I wanted to do, and I think like most people, but I really wanted to learn something, and I was fortunate enough that at school I was very involved in student government and leading activities there, and I really got comfortable and confidence at a place like Stonehill that I was actually a leader, and I didn't go in thinking I was a leader, but I came out feeling like a leader. So I got an opportunity to go to Bank of Boston, which was now Bank of America, into one of their operation management programs, which was about a year program, to develop leadership skills and management skills. And I thought, why not go into financial services, and why not learn how to be a leadership? Can't be a bad thing. We didn't call it fintech, which is a big term now, but that was something that seemed interesting to me, and so that's how I started my career in payments.
So fast forward, you end up at ACI, which is a payments company. Describe what you were doing, because I know you had success at least really growing a couple of businesses there.
Yeah. Well, so before, what happened is I left Bank of Boston and I went into a small company that was 10 people or so, and ended up growing that company with the founder about 10 times, which was a lot of fun. So that was the first thing we did. And then that company got acquired by SunGard. And then I thought the big company again, I didn't want to do that again. I went to another small company, and this company was only about 12 people. We grew that up to about 300 people, and that grew about 40 times, if you can believe it. And that was acquired by ACI, which is how I ended up at ACI. So I went big company, small company, small company, back to big company, and now I'm back to smaller company. So you can see what happened. So I ended up at ACI, and as I was there, the CEO and I ended up working really well together, and he ended up making me president of all of basically sales, distribution, and services for the company, which was all the revenue of the company at the time. And so it was quite an interesting situation, because you were trying to take a company that hadn't really grown at all in about 12 years to try to triple the size of the company publicly. So we did it through acquisitions, through changing a lot of processes and structures, trying to really pull out what was the innovative pieces of the company that was growing and really focus on those things, because it's really hard trying to take 2,000 people across 50 countries with 50 products and try to get it to grow. And that's where my first real global challenge of growing companies came about.
So it sounds like you had a combination strategy of M&A and working on processes and systems, maybe simplifying your service product mix, or what were you doing exactly?
Well, you are spot on. So what we decided to do, and maybe we took a page out of IBM, is we created these things called product stacks: red stack, blue stack, white stack. And we took the 50 products and we stacked them together. And we said, if someone's interested in product number 19, most likely they also need products 11 through 19. So let's try to sell those as a bundle together to clients. And so we made it very simple. So you didn't have to learn all the products, but you could recognize these products usually go together, and let's try to package them together. And we did that, and we also created sort of standard pricing around the world, because each country was doing its own pricing. And we said, Australia and Canada, they kind of look similar. Their banking structure kind of similar, but you can't say that the United States and Indonesia look the same because of how they were doing things. So we standardized our pricing, and we packaged things, and we did acquisitions, and that led to a lot of the growth.
So that was a lot of change you were bringing to both of those businesses that you grew, and I'm just curious about how it was you were able to get such a big global company on board with that massive amount of change.
Well, it starts with the management team getting on board. So we had a really good management team, and they all got on board, and they all wanted to do this, and there had to be some changes on the team, but we made those changes, people got on board. And then from there, I had to get their management team on board, which we did. And again, we had to make changes to some of the people on the team to do that. And then what we started doing is we started going into monthly calls. I guess you'd call them podcasts now. We, with the whole team, tried to sell our team. We went into marketing mode to our clients and to our people. And then as you guys were involved in it, because you helped us with this, we used to do these big annual meetings where we'd pull everybody in a room, thousands of people, and we would do a showcase and say, this is why what we're doing is really special. And here's all the clients that liked it. And we got them to believe. And we created a theme around it called One ACI. And we got everyone united. And it was amazing to see people from Australia talking to people from Italy who had been in the company 15 years they never met.
Yeah.
And they could share best practices and share stories. It was really about telling the story of where we want to be and where we want to go and getting people behind it. And it was amazing how fast things changed once we got that enthusiasm back in the company. It was amazing, actually. And so that was a fun time.
So telling the story really ignited people with a shared sense of purpose, it sounds like, instead of being in Australia or Canada or just kind of fighting for their own business. They were working for the whole.
That's right.
Great.
That's right. It was a great, we said the mission of One ACI, as we used to call it, and everyone knew that they had a piece, their piece would add up to something of the mission, and no one wanted to let down their piece, and that everyone's piece was important. Even though you were a smaller piece of the bigger whole, you had to do your piece, and that's what we tried to emphasize, and it worked really well.
So then you decide, after all that success, to leap back into a startup company, and now this is your own startup company, CEO and founder of BlueSnap. Tell me, what are you doing at BlueSnap?
Well, I think people ask me that question every day in the company. But yeah, what happened is I saw a major innovation and change happening in payments, where really e-commerce, the Amazon effect was happening, mobile was coming along, people are buying on their phones, and an opportunity presented itself actually where what actually happened was a private equity firm in Boston called Great Hill Partners acquired a company in Israel and said, what if we partner and you become CEO, we acquire the company, change the name, and sort of found this new owner. So the company genesis was really in Israel. I sort of became the one that brought it to Boston, so to speak. And so that initiative to try to go in and bring Amazon-like one-click services to all the merchants that are trying to bill people on cards was the goal that we had 5 years ago, and that was the mission that we wanted to achieve.
So even though we're all used to shopping online, we have different experiences with different retailers and sellers, and I think that might be where people are going to connect with what you're trying to do for the merchants, right? So what are you trying to do for them?
That's exactly right. So we're trying to normalize that experience, right? So whenever you have a great experience, whether it's a Starbucks app or buying something at Dunkin' Donuts or Netflix or Spotify, you're saying, wow, that's so easy to buy and download goods or pick up services. That actually is really hard to do because without getting a lot of detail, our payments system is extremely fragmented. There's many banks that issue cards and there's many banks that accept cards, and when you multiply that against currencies and countries, it becomes a factorial problem. So what the merchant has to do is figure out which is the best bank for their situation, their product globally, and try to figure out how to connect to them and work through fraud rules and all kinds of stuff. So what we do is we basically do that for them. We create a platform that allows them to connect so that they can easily offer a one-click checkout, maximizing the shopper experience, or frictionless, we like to say, the shopper experience, maximizing the declines in the fraud so that they can actually not have to worry about the whole payments ecosystem. And so that's what we're trying to do. And I think as this propagates itself through e-commerce, you're going to see more and more people having a much better checkout experience online, because I think now when you have a bad one, you don't want to go to that store anymore.
That's exactly right. There's too many choices. So you've jumped, you've always been in e-commerce, but you really, it's getting more and more crowded all the time, and yet you've had amazing success here in a very short time. I think you said you've been growing at 200%.
Yeah, triple-digit growth. Yeah,
that's
been great.
Amazing. So how have you seem to have the Midas touch, and I'm kind of curious about what is it about your leadership style? Forget about the idea. I mean, the idea is a good one, but there's a million good ideas out there. So what is it, do you think, about your leadership style and your leadership team, because I know they've been very important to you, that drives that kind of growth?
Yeah, well, been really fortunate to have a super supportive team that's been with me, most of them, for a long time. And we get an idea together, and together we persevere and try to convince everyone this is the place to go. And lately that's been a lot easier than it was earlier on. So that's a really big deal, getting people bought onto the vision, the story, the opportunity, where we want to be. One of my favorite quotes is Wayne Gretzky, who wasn't the best skater, wasn't the best hockey player, but became just wasn't the best skills person, but became the best hockey player, because he was always going where the puck was going to be. And I just think that's always what I'm trying to think. Where do we want to be? Where do we want to be? So I think once you get everyone bought in on that, a lot of things start falling into place. Not to say that problems happen every single day, right? You have to constantly tack and change, and things happen, and employees don't work out the way you want, and customers don't do things the way you want them to do, and software doesn't work, and Visa changes regulations. But you have to expect that's going to happen. You have to build a process in place. So I think we've been really good at getting people, the team behind our vision, our passion, really good at putting processes in place, really good at change management, and really, really good at listening to our customers and saying this is what they really need to succeed, and trying to adjust to meet their demands.
Mm-hmm. So tell me about a time when you've really had a setback, because I love when you're honest about saying there's always something happening, right? The regulations change, people don't work out, customers don't get it, whatever it is. Think about a setback, a real setback you've had in your life or your career, and how you dealt with it.
Well, I think some of the hardest things for me was when I made the change to come here. I was the only person here, and it was a big adjustment going from 2,000 or 3,000 people to me, right? I mean, there's no one to call to help me set up my PC. There's no one to who helps me hire, and so for a couple of months it was kind of lonely. And it was really hard, and I said to myself, did I really make the right decision? Am I really going to be able to do this by myself? And even if I get a few of the team members to come over, because it was very difficult to say, oh yeah, leave this great company that we just built, that I was just crowing about how great it was, and come now over here where I'm going to do this thing. And by the way, there's only 2 or 3 of us, and we don't even have an office yet, and we're trying to do it. And so it was really a tough, lonely kind of time. But luckily, I think another big part of innovation and change and growth is you got to take some risks. And there's a book called Little Bets, and I'm big on little bets. Now maybe I made a big bet, but I was making a lot of little bets along the way. And so that was a tough time, and it took probably 8 or 9 months for me to really get comfortable that we're really going to come through this thing and persevere in what we're trying to do.
Yeah. So there must have been a couple of nights when you went home and said, maybe I should go back to corporate America, right?
That's for sure. I definitely came back and said, boy, there was a lot of support. There was a lot of there. I was the president of the company. Yeah. What did I do? But as I sit here now, it looks like one of the greatest decisions I've ever made. But, you have to kind of have the faith, if that makes any sense, that you're going to be able to figure it out along the way. Because you're right, there's a million great ideas. Getting there is the other half of the story that a lot of people don't tell, right?
That's exactly right. So I love the metaphor of skating to the puck, and it's something that we've heard, but it's harder to do than it seems. It's a great concept. One of the stories you have told me is about how you get your team together every Monday, and I would call this a skating to the puck meeting, but Can you describe what you do when you get together on Mondays?
Well, I think there's 2 parts of that. One is you need to agree on where the puck's going to be. Okay, right. So I don't think Wayne Gretzky always was right where he was skating to the puck. So one of the things we do is we also admit when we got the pucks in it didn't quite go where we thought it was going to go. So I think that's one thing. So the second thing is what we try to do is we try to pick a vision of where we want to be, whether it's a revenue goal, whether it's a product goal, whatever it may be. And we try to talk about what's getting in the way of getting there every Monday. And we don't make it every Monday because traveling and holidays come into it, but it's a great way to just have a lot of little discussion points, and sometimes I call them small confrontations, because it's sometimes you're disagreeing on the tacking along the way, and I felt if you have those every week or at least 3 times a month, it allows you to get things before they become big problems and before you get way off course.
So you're anticipating what might happen.
Yeah, we're discussing, geez, we thought this was going to be a week and now it's 4 weeks. We thought this would happen and this didn't happen, but it still doesn't take us away from our major goal. It's just we're dealing with something that's either bigger or smaller than we thought along the journey. And so it's a tough meeting sometimes because you're not all agreeing. It's not everyone walks away with the same to-do list, but on the other hand, you do walk away feeling we're on the same page and we're going to work through it.
Yeah. You just brought up something that in our research on growth companies has been really important. One of the most important things that fast growth companies do is they make constructive conflict part of their daily activity. In other words, it's what they do. And I wonder where you got the idea to do it that way, because a lot of maybe newer leaders and maybe even seasoned leaders sometimes seek harmony, but harmony isn't what drives growth.
That's a great question. As you asked, can't remember where I got that from. I know I've been doing it for a long time, and I think of it as sort of, you got to put all your problems on the table in an honest way and discuss what they are. And it's not a time to sort of pick on somebody in the meeting, because there's always personnel issues and you have to deal with that outside of it. But I think it's a constructive way to deal with what's going on. And a lot of the issues I find are between departments. It's between sales and development, or it's between marketing and sales, and it's what falls through the cracks. So to me, it's trying to work seamlessly through that is really the most important part of it. But I don't know where I got it, but I know that I can't live without it. I feel like and if I don't do it for a couple of weeks, I was on vacation recently for a couple of weeks, I'm like, what happened? What's going on? What problems are coming up? So I crave it. And maybe the rest of the management team are so happy they were off for a couple of weeks. But I feel like it's all important, and I feel like we'd be out of sync if we didn't do it. So it's just been something that's been in my DNA for at least 20 years.
It sounds also like you've been really successful getting your team to put on their enterprise hat, right? Not just be in charge of their area of the business, but take responsibility for the whole enterprise, which is another of the elements of high-performing teams that we found is so important. How do you encourage people to do that, to be responsible both for their area and for the whole?
Well, I think there's a bunch of ways. I think first of all, you've got to have the individuals who wake up thinking about that. Yes, my team's got to be good, but I'm here for the company. And so I think it starts with hiring the right person in their DNA and trying to get rid of people who are all about trying to just make their department work. I think the second thing that's really important on that is we're all shareholders, we're all incented as a team. There's no individual compensation plans for you doing a good job. I don't believe in that. The team wins, the team loses, just like football or any of these other sports, right? Mm-hmm. And the third thing which I realized is we have a person whose job is here to actually manage what we call business operations, all the projects that cut across the teams. And I think that is probably one of the most critical roles you can have, because most projects and most success cut across the company, right? From a customer's point of view, okay, whether they're walking into Dunkin' Donuts or Nordstrom's or Amazon, they don't care if Amazon has a warehousing department, a website department. They're shopping across the country. So somehow they figured out how to cut across the company to deliver you your package right away. And we look at it the same way, that role is critical to have. And it's so important. That's their job, full time.
You've really been able to inspire people with a vision for whatever you're doing. How do you do that? How do you get it out of your head and into the community conversation so other people are talking about it and they connect with that purpose?
I think that the best way to do that is just stories. I love stories, and I mean we work with you about how to even get better at telling stories. But I think people just remember stories, resonate with stories. They don't remember flip charts and Excel spreadsheets, and so I try to just tell a story that I think is simple, that most people can resonate with, and say, do you, and try to get feedback. Do you agree? Do you see it the way I'm seeing it? And if you don't, I want to know, because maybe I'm off. And I think if you can really boil a story down into simple little phrases, it catches fire pretty quickly. Everybody loves a good story, whether it's the Kardashian stuff or whether it's a story that turns into a movie, whatever it may be. Stories are great, and we think we have an awesome story here at BlueSnap, and we also feel like we're helping people at the same time, which is kind of another great part of it, right? Because people want to help people, I'd say, most of the time.
Yeah. So I understand you're an avid golfer.
Oh, who told you
that? Well, avid doesn't talk about your score.
Okay.
I mean, I've only been playing for 5 or 6 years, but I love the sport.
Really?
I don't know if I'll ever break 100, but I love it. Well, anything you've learned on the golf course that informs your view of, life or business or anything like that?
Well, I do like golf, and I feel like that's my time to get away because there's no cell phones, and you're not getting interrupted. Except you've 3 or 4 folks and a couple of caddies. But I think you learn a lot about people when you're playing golf. You learn about everything you can about people, just their honesty, their integrity. You learn things they talk about in the golf course that they might not talk about in a meeting, and you get to really just enjoy being with people that you like to be with. So I do like that a lot. I like the social part of it. And it's fun to be outside. I like to be outside as much as you can. So, and I belong to Weston Golf Club, and I think there's just a great group of people over there who, are probably cringing if I mention all their names in this interview. But they know me quite well over there, and I do spend quite a bit of time over there, and it's a little bit of an oasis of fun ways to talk about problems, because there's also a lot of successful people that have run into issues, and it's sometimes another great way to bounce issues off of people there and say, geez, how did you handle this situation? And they've got some great suggestions. So I look at it as also a learning experience as you're dealing with people. So
yeah, that's great. Wondering, as we wrap up, what advice would you have for CEOs? Looking back, something you wish you'd known 5 or 10 years ago that's, in retrospect, has really been important to your success and having fun and enjoying the ride.
Yeah, I would say if I had to go back, things I would have done quicker is probably been more passionate earlier on about the vision. I've always felt it was the right thing to do, but it didn't always come out as strong as I would do it now. I think the second thing is I find that this harmony that's a really good way of saying it. Things aren't always in harmony. You have to break a little glass. It's got to be a little confrontational, and you got to get comfortable with that. If you can't do it as CEO, someone better be doing it. Now, and I don't mean disruption, and I don't mean alienation. I mean, small confrontations. You got to get comfortable with that, and I feel a lot of people are uncomfortable with that. They don't want to say in the meeting something's not working, and so I think that's a big thing. I think the other thing is every time your belly, as I say, is telling you a person's not working out on your team or your organization, you have to make that decision to part ways. And I think I'm also an avid football fan, and I just think the way they manage it's very unemotional. It's just business, and it doesn't mean you don't like the person. It doesn't mean it's a great person at all, but it's just not working, and you need to adjust the situation. And every time I've done a personal decision, I've always said, geez, I wish I've done it faster, even at this stage of being a CEO for almost 20 years. It's just something that young CEOs, I feel, don't address quick enough. People are on your team, they get your vision, and they don't. And so I think the last thing is it's okay to not know something and ask questions and say, I don't understand this accounting, or I don't understand this marketing program, or I don't get it. Can you explain it to me? And I feel people want to act like they know everything, and I constantly am I'm okay saying I didn't understand it. I mean, I tell everyone I wasn't an A student, so because of that, I always had to ask for help. And maybe because I had to ask for help, I got comfortable with that. So I'm very comfortable going and saying, help me with this, I don't understand. And your teammates jump in and help all the time. And I try to encourage that all the time. Just ask someone for help. Yeah. So those are 3 or 4 things that I've learned. And every now and then when I'm talking to people, I'm constantly find myself saying that to folks as sort of from a mentoring point of view.
Great advice. Ralph Dangelmaier, BlueSnap CEO and founder, thank you. And great wishes for continued success.
Thanks a lot, Suzanne. It was great to be here.